Accessing library computer data.
And to make sure that history never forgets the name Enterprise.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Penske Podcast. You haven't tuned in before. This is a podcast where we are running through all 178 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, giving our thoughts and feelings about each and every one. Right now we're up to episode 7 of season 5. This one is called Unification Part 1. Directed by Les Landau, teleplay goes to Jerry Taylor. It originally aired back on November 4th, 1991. In this one, hearing that legendary Starfleet officer Spock may have defected to the Romulan Empire, Picard travels to Vulcan to talk to Spock's father, former Ambassador Sarek, who is near death from the ravages of Bendai syndrome. That's it. Clay is here to talk about this one, so after this break, me and Clay are going to go deep on Unification Part 1.
Data, you're moving about in a very, well, android way.
I am sorry, Captain. I will be more careful.
Don't call me Captain.
I understand, sir. I have found the place where they were standing.
Where?
It is here. At this doorway. A legal intercessor's office. The name is similar to Pardek's. It would appear to be one of his relatives.
All right, Clay, so you attended the ultimate voyage. Some would say the final voyage of, you watched a orchestral performance of the Star Trek theme music sometime in Boston last night?
I did, yes. Myself and Sean went over to the Wang Center, where all of the best Star Trek things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It was at the Wang. It wasn't at Symphony, obviously.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was great. They did a really nice job. They did music from across every series and every movie, and thankfully they didn't play the theme song to Enterprise.
Oh, that's too bad. You should have to pay like $10 extra and hang out afterwards to get the majesty of that performance.
One guy and a guitar just really crooning the theme from Enterprise. But no, it was really good. They touched on all the different eras, and the best part was they had this video package that they ran with it, which I believe was narrated by Michael Dorn. That was sort of they would touch on a theme, and then along with the music, they would play this great, edited video package of everything, like across all the shows and movies to go with that theme. It was really cool.
Yeah, they would touch on like original series all the way through modern Trek, I guess. It is a lot of music, which I don't think I've ever mentioned. My favorite theme song is Deep Space Nine's.
Oh yeah.
Although the original series with the when it's like the singing in season 2 is some of my favorite too. It feels it's so dated, but it's like super 60s. You just can't get any more 60s than that.
Yeah, that was their closer. They did their they finished the show, and then they stood up and got their applause, and then sat down and played the original theme.
Oh, nice.
The one criticism I do have, well, two criticisms. One was, when they played the original theme, it got really kind of hokey because the video package they were showing was just like behind-the-scenes clips of like people putting makeup on and stuff. And
sure.
I don't know, it was kind of weird and kind of goofy. It really took the gravitas away and reminded you that you were watching a silly science fiction show.
Right. They didn't have like the epic moments from the original series like plastered in the back or anything like that.
Yeah. And the other thing, which is a legit gripe, is when they had a whole sequence that they were talking about that was like the theme was the battles, the space battles and stuff. A lot of great footage, and they did not use the line must be drawn here.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the video screen when I got there, I just assumed they were going to play the trailer for First Contact for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was kind of bummed they didn't use that, because I mean, they did use Let History Never Forget the Name Enterprise, though, which was good.
Oh, nice. The call sign for this podcast. Interesting. Well, that's good. I'm glad it was enjoyable anyway. I don't know if I will have lasted 2 hours. I could easily do like an hour and a half, that kind of stuff. But I'm the person who gets tired of any kind of music show halfway through. I've had enough of it.
Yeah. Well, luckily for you, there was an intermission.
Yeah.
And the end of the first half, they ended with the music and the last couple seconds of Best of Both Worlds Part 1. So they ended with the camera move on to Riker where he says fire and that big music swell. It was pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that is that's a great intermission to go in on. I think you have to pick that moment. I don't think there's anything else that really comes close to it. Interesting. Well, I'm glad it was good. I'm glad it was enjoyable. And it's funny that you just saw an original series thing, since we're going to talk about Unification Part 1 right now, which is bringing the past into focus in Star Trek: The Next Generation, I guess. This isn't the first appearance of a original series cast member on the show. McCoy is in the pilot, Encounter at Farpoint.
Kinda.
Kind of, yes. He's under about 5,000 pounds of old age makeup.
Yep.
And this is Spock looks relatively the same as he does later on. But yeah, this is the first sort of appearance of a character is going to have sort of an impact on the story, at least. Unification. Well, what'd you think? Why don't you lead us off with sort of general thoughts about Part 1 here?
I'm going to turn it back to you. I want to hear what you thought about this first.
Just the first part?
Whatever you feel like.
Yeah, this is going to be tough because we watched both of them, just so people know, but we're going to split them up as best we can into the 2 episodes. The first one, this episode is like pure filler, and I think it's sort of garbage. I think this whole Unification story is kind of garbage.
Okay. Because that's what I was going to say.
Okay. Like, I watched them through, and the second time through this first one, I thought the first one was better than the second one, and the second time through, I think they're pretty comparable to each other. I just think that the first episode's problem, this one that we're going to be talking about, is that everything that happens here is pure filler until you get to the end where Spock appears.
Yep.
So why don't you take it from there? What would you think in general?
Well, I'm glad that I watched this after seeing the season ender, season opener Klingon 2-parter. Mm-hmm. Because it's a really good thing to compare this to, because they kind of deal with sort of similar things in terms of it's diplomacy, et cetera. People backstabbing each other, et cetera, et cetera. But where I felt that the Klingon story was packed too full, this one felt like they did not have enough to warrant really anything.
Right. Yeah.
It's such a huge waste of Spock. It's so boring. It's really boring.
This is a very boring episode.
Even I'm gonna just say, like, covering both of them, I just thought the whole thing was just boring as hell.
Yeah. So okay, I mean, to break it down, I think the second part is more boring, just because the second part is a lot of people walking and talking.
Yeah.
The first one, at least, people are kind of shaking. They're kind of moving around a little bit. But let's see what the best way to approach this would be.
So the way that the thing I did appreciate about this is I feel like there's good character scenes in both of these shows. It's going to be hard for me to talk about them.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
They're good character moments and character scenes, but as far as the plot goes, they are completely inconsequential. Like, my favorite scene of the first episode, I think it was the first episode, was where Picard's trying to sleep.
Yes.
And Data is being a creep. That was great.
That's probably the funniest scene they've ever done, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a solid comedy bit.
Yeah, it was really good, but it's like 5 minutes of nothing that matters at all.
Yeah.
Like, they very easily could have cut that out and just cut to them getting the phone call. And the stuff with Picard and the Klingon captain is really good. It's like, it's Picard. Picard's getting shit pushed back from the Klingons, and he's throwing it right back in their face. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It's not important to the plot in any way. It's not like the Klingons, come back and help them. It's just character stuff. And I mean, I'll give them credit for doing good character stuff in this story, because they clearly had nothing else.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the show's kind of got that now, where it is like character moments can kind of not save episodes, but they're like bright points in episodes where they write things like I agree with everything you said there. It's like all those little incidents that Picard and Data have to deal with is really just killing time on their way to Romulus.
Yeah.
Like,
There's a scene where they literally go in for a costume fitting.
Yes, yeah. There's a scene where they have like soup, and like the focus is on they don't like the soup. Like it's all very odd. And I think you're right to compare it to Redemption. This is much worse than Redemption is. I think I agree with you, and it's a total waste of Spock. In a bizarre way. The first episode, just because you don't see him until the very end. And then, like, I think the first one is a good place to talk about this. Like, what do you think? This is the first appearance of Romulus. We've never actually been to Romulus before. Mm-hmm. What do you think of the portrayal of Romulans in this episode?
I don't know. I didn't really feel like they stood out that much. I felt like they were kind of even-tempered.
Yeah, they're very. They're clearly based on like Roman structure. Yeah. Like they have a senate and everything, but they don't. The show doesn't really do anything with them.
They really don't.
It never explains why. The people seem to be largely peaceful, yet for some reason they have a democratically elected senate that is like warlike all the time, and like their internal logic doesn't make a lot of sense. Where the Klingons make sense internally, even though sometimes the more you think about it, the less they'd actually seem like they'd make sense in a real universe. Right. The Romulans are weird in that they just don't have anything standing out about them. Yeah,
excuse me. One of the problems I had with this was, the whole story was. And maybe this is just me for not doing my research or being enough of a nerd about this stuff, but I don't really even know what the big split is with the Romulans and the Vulcans.
Yeah.
Like, how far away are their planets? Because as far as when they talk about it later, they say, oh, they're on their way to Vulcan, and they're traveling at warp 1. They'll be there in like 45 minutes. All right, so they must be a pretty good distance away from each other. What is the animosity? What is the split because of? I might be showing my total newbiness here.
No, they don't explain it in this episode. But it's basically just that when the Vulcans used to be like the Romulans, right? Mm-hmm. And the Vulcans had this sort of turning point where they were like, we want to give up our emotions and we want to be logical. The Romulans basically rejected that and left Vulcan and settled on Romulus. So they're basically the same species that just sort of went to different places and have a different outlook on life.
Right.
But otherwise, they're identical to each other.
I feel like, and maybe this is, going back and rewriting characters or whatever, but I feel like if that's the case, if you've got a story that's about the Vulcans and the Romulans and the difference between them and wanting to come together, you really got to make the Romulans, like, actively different than the Vulcans.
Yes.
It's unless you're going for a Dr. Seuss kind of thing where it's like, well, he puts the butter on the top of his bread and they put the butter on the bottom of their bread.
Yep.
But like if the Klingons, if the Vulcans are, totally void of emotions and hyper-logical, I feel like the Romulans should be more Klingon-like, where they're, more passionate and more not as far as Klingons go, but that kind of difference.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot because they can't go too crazy because then they're basically the Klingons. So it's like, what's the point of having the two of them?
What was kind of funny was Spock's buddy there, Pardek, yeah. The first scene with him, the way the actor looks and the way he walks into the room, I expected his voice to be like, I can't believe we got to deal with these Vulcans again. But he started talking. He's like, what have we here that we can talk about? And that's Spock. I was like, what the? Like, there was no... Even the high council guy or whatever was super laid back. And, he had a little bit of an edge to him, but, nothing there... Maybe it was just what the stuff they were saying wasn't interesting. I don't know.
No, it's a combination of like it's a really dull episode. Like, I mean, I guess I'll continue with I think the shame here is that I think the beginning of this one where we see Sarek again is really unfortunate because it kind of ruins for me the Sarek episode in season 3, which is one of my favorites from that season. I feel seeing that character again doesn't really work, and that scene is also terrible.
Oh, it's really bad.
I don't understand why. I feel like the acting in this one stood out to me as really bad. That admiral who plays the opening admiral, what the fuck was she looking at when she was talking to Picard?
She was like looking at her cue cards on the ceiling or something. That scene with Sarek is hilarious because Picard just gets finished talking to his wife. It's his wife, right?
Yeah, it's his wife.
And she's like, no one can get to him. Good luck. He's been doing this all day, or for the last 2 days. He's like, blah, blah, blah. And then Picard just goes, Spock. And he goes, oh, hey, Picard. What's going on?
I like the fact that she's like, he's like this all the time. Sometimes I can get through to him. And she just screams, Sarek! And he stops and he turns. But, I mean, that scene was so terrible to me because the character of Sarek shows no consistency that he's sick. He like fluctuates between being normal and not normal.
Yeah, as soon as he snaps out of whatever it is, it's like he's perfectly fine.
Yes.
And it was really confusing for me because I was like, is this a weird Vulcan thing that I don't know about, or
it's absolutely
like Vulcan bipolar disease or something?
Yeah, we take our sick and we lay them on like a granite slab in the middle of a room, and they just have to sit here.
As soon as he like calmed down and got up and started walking around, the first thing I thought was, wait, so did you choose to sleep on this block and just writhe around? Like, are you just overreacting? What the hell's going on?
There's a lot of sleeping arrangements in this episode. The Klingons and Vulcans have a lot in common.
I think he was supposed to have like Vulcan Alzheimer's or something.
No, he does. That's the point. That's the point of the Sarek episode.
Okay.
He's shown
I didn't
that,
watch that one.
he's suffering from a disease Vulcans get, where it's basically Alzheimer's, but what they do is they lose control of their emotions.
Oh, okay.
So it's like equally as embarrassing for a Vulcan.
Gotcha.
And
that makes a little more sense, but it's still not a good scene.
That's what he's suffering from here. I mean, it's just, I feel so much of the acting in this was bad. That Sarek scene is also, it feels like it's 10 minutes long. It goes on and on and on to a character that I felt made it's fine goodbye. I would have been fine just hearing, in the cold open that Sarek has died.
Yeah. That probably would have been better.
It just, Sarek's such a good episode, and this is just such a disaster. Like, it just changes everything about that episode, unfortunately.
Yeah, and also, I mean, when you've got the emotional moment of having to tell Spock that his father died, the fact that you see him kind of takes away from that, because the whole angle on that emotion is that, oh, well, they never got a chance to work their shit out. So if you like you said, if you in the cold open you hear that Sarek has died, and then it kind of adds to that, where it's like, oh, well, we didn't get to see him either. We didn't get to see him for the last time.
Right, yeah.
We didn't realize that season 3 was the last time we were going to see him. Right.
It's like death is so sudden. It explains the Spock, being sort of surprised, not surprised by it, but it's sort of catching them off guard and stuff. And it's tough. It's just because I really like the Vulcans. Like, the Sarek episode did it for me originally, but this episode's a good thing too, where this will be easier to talk about in the second one, but the Vulcans are a tough race to play as an actor in a weird way, and I think Nimoy really nailed it, because you can tell the people who play Vulcans very badly are the ones who play them like they're playing Data. Like, they're totally flat about everything.
Yep.
And that's not really the point of the race. Like, Nimoy plays Spock as if he has emotions, but he's constantly trying to control what he's talking about.
Right.
Which makes sense with the terms of the character, but Sarek obviously does it in this one too. Those two have been playing Vulcans for 30, 50 years at this point, or whatever, whenever this aired. But it's just I think they're such an interesting race, and the Romulans are the exact opposite, where they're not interesting in any way whatsoever. And it's too bad that they're trying to get this thing going that's really not going to get off the ground. I don't know. Outside of that, I thought that the acting was just horrific in the first half of this. And then we get to, I do want to say one thing about the Sarek. The Sarek scene was almost saved by the end of it, where they do the peace and long life, live long and prosper, and Sarek can't finish his sentence.
Yeah.
That's sort of sad. That was kind of nice. It's just a nice touch of the old original series every time they do that. And outside of that, we move into the what'd you think of the ship graveyard scenes here with Riker and the crew trying to find a lost Vulcan ship?
Well, I knew that we were in trouble for this episode when I found the B plot way more interesting than the plot involving beloved character Spock from the original series.
Yep.
I thought it was. I thought this whole thing was going to be a little bit more. I don't know.
Intricate or like related to it somehow.
Yeah, I thought that the Spock thing was a pretty good setup where it's like, oh, it looks like he's defected. Plus, there's sort of a mystery going on, but the mystery turns out just to be like they throw that away very quickly and they figure all that out pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and then. Well, that's the second episode, but then Riker plays piano for some reason.
we have 5 minutes of dealing with the most difficult bureaucrat in the galaxy, which I don't mind, which is kind of funny. It's like it's outside what TNG usually does.
Mm-hmm. My favorite thing, because I hated it so much, and I really hope Tana watches this episode, is when they're dealing with that guy who runs the junkyard. And he's not helping them at all. And then Riker turns to Troy and says, "This sounds like it's something that'll be up your alley." And I was like, oh, great. They're finally going to use Troy for what she's meant for, to try and get into someone's mind and connect with them on an emotional level.
Or manipulate him emotionally, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Nope. It's just because she's got boobs. That's the entire thing. That's it.
And this guy's super lonely out there with his eel. And I like that the episode even acknowledges it. He's like, he probably did this so that I'll be more friendly to you. He's like, it probably works. And then he sits down and just talks to her about what he finds on ships.
She didn't even get the chance to act or seduce, not seduce him, but
butter him up or anything. She doesn't butter him up or anything.
She doesn't talk to him. He just comes over and it's like, woman, and he's like, you got me.
Yep, my one weak. It's the Harold and Kumar line. It's like bullets, my only weakness. He's got Troy, and it's right. He's just talking to her, and she seems enamored. He's also, it's a weird character because it's not like he's unlikable enough for it to be awkward. He seems pleasant enough. You know what I mean?
I thought he probably was the best actor in the whole episode.
Yeah, he probably.
Because when they cut to him the first time, I was thinking, man, he's making some really interesting choices here. The way he's playing this character, because he clearly chose to play it very drawn out and dry and kind of molassesy.
Yep.
And I was like, he made a clear choice for the 4 lines of dialogue he had in this episode.
Yeah. And I liked him as an actor. I kind of like the idea of a ship graveyard. We haven't a junkyard. We haven't seen that before. It's kind of a cool idea.
No, I think it's a great idea. I mean, it makes sense.
It does, yeah.
To an extent. I mean, you got how you get all that shit over there. But anyway,
yeah.
But no, I mean, yeah. I remember I can't remember if they do it in First Contact, but I know they do it in the reboot, where they have that scene where the Enterprise comes out of hyperdrive.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, that's a Star Wars term. And they end up right in the middle of the remnants of a battle.
Yeah,
I guess they do it in the Borg episode, Best of Both Worlds.
Yep. They fly through the Wolf 359.
But in the reboot, obviously they have more money, so it's more impressive. But that's a really cool visual when they pull out of
warp drive,
drive, and it's just pieces of ships floating on. That's a very cool visual,
right? Yeah, and you gotta react as if you're dodging it and stuff. It's a cool idea. I like how they just sort of let it float around in space, and this guy just flies around. I don't understand. All right, so at this point we get introduced to a ship that attacks the Enterprise.
Yeah.
I don't. You can talk about the second episode. I don't understand this ship. What is this ship? What is it doing?
No idea.
I have no idea what the point of that ship is.
I believe it has something to do with the pieces that they found at the beginning of the episode.
Which also, and sorry to interrupt, but it's such poor writing. I had to watch this episode twice and then rewind it to understand what the pieces of the ship they were looking at had to do with anything.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I kind of zoned out at a lot of parts, and I went back and I was like, oh, well, I zoned out and I was like, this is pretty boring. I don't need to know this. But then I was getting confused, so I went back and watched the stuff I zoned out on. Did not help at all.
No, it's that stuff appears unless you're paying like 100% attention. It makes no sense what they're looking at, where the ship came from, and it's still so bizarre. I guess they found a Ferengi ship that had this, and they just took it from him for some reason. And that's our kickoff point that leads them on this wild goose chase where they go meet this other ship that I guess is piloted by, or yeah, it's tangentially related to a character we're going to meet in episode 2, but it makes no goddamn sense why they're stealing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the Romulan plot, which is weird.
Yeah, not that I can think of. I mean, is it the same? Is the ship they end up blowing up, is that a Vulcan ship?
No, it's the husband of the piano singer.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not Vulcan. It's not Romulan. It's just his own ship for some reason.
Then I have no idea what the point of that was.
And he's been stealing supplies by just being in a place where another ship usually is, and they beam it onto his ship. It's so stupid.
Well, I think there was a Vulcan. Wasn't it? They had a Vulcan ship in the junkyard.
Yes,
but that ship was not where it was supposed to be.
I thought they were saying they looked for the Vulcan ship, was just stolen, and then they're like, "Oh, there's usually another ship over here that we beam supplies to, and that one is also missing."
Yeah, and I think was that ship they blew up. Was that ship supposed to take the place of the ship they? Who cares?
That ship was supposed to take the place, not the Vulcan ship, but the ship that they beam stuff to.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
And, okay, we figured it out.
Great. And apparently it does that only to kick the plot forward later on. There's no reason otherwise. And, of course, they don't even talk to the crew. They just shoot them and it blows up.
Yeah. I wish they had kind of given Riker a look or something where he looks back at Worf. He was like, Jesus, man. I just said shoot for the guns, not blow the whole ship up. I said across her nose, not up it.
It's so silly. And it's too bad. It's like the V plot is somewhat interesting until that point, and then it all just kind of falls apart into this A story that we're talking about. But I mean,
and who flying that ship when they show up in that junkyard looks around and goes, "Yep, there's a bunch of junk." Is that a Galaxy class starship
in perfect condition?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like you can just turn the lights off basically, and like it's as if nothing had happened.
It's a great feature of the Galaxy class Starfleet.
It's next to these other burnt out like husks of ships, and it's just perfectly floating there, and no one seems to care. Well, anyway, this episode wraps up with Spock and Data, who dress up like Romulans, go down to Romulus.
Picard and Data.
Oh, sorry, what did I say?
Spock and Data.
Oh, Picard and Data. Yeah, Picard and Data go down.
I would also like to say another great costuming choice in this was the return of Picard's sweet-ass crushed velvet jacket.
Yep, it's been been a staple of whenever he's got some serious business to do, he puts on his sweet jacket.
Got to get it done in style.
Which someone was telling me, it was either Trek About or Modi was saying that apparently the story behind that is that the fake leather on that jacket stunk so much that it kind of became an in-joke into the cast while they were filming. But I think that's the reason the jacket doesn't stick around. Anyway, they beam down to Romulus, and we meet a underground resistance led by Pardek, which is trying to do what the title of this episode is, and they're trying to reunify Vulcan and Romulus. And apparently there is a minority of people in both planets that wish this to happen, probably more on Vulcan than there are on Romulus. And Pardek is a politician that is going to be a part of this. And then, boom, we get the reveal. Mr. Spock is there, and he says, "You found me, Mr. Picard." And that's the end of the episode. I feel we can cut this episode short and go into part 2. I don't know how you feel. Do you have anything else you want to say about this one?
Well, the only other thing I did want to say is I was expecting a lot more overall from the both of these together, because it felt like the thing that really stood out to me in this first half is it felt like they were saving their money or something. Like, it felt really empty at the beginning where it was like only 2 people at a time. You don't even see the rest of the crew for like 15 minutes into the show.
Yep.
And I was just like, oh, okay, well, they got Spock, so they're probably saving some cash so they can use Nimoy and, you know, probably go crazy on Romulus.
On Romulus, yeah.
Romulus.
Yep.
But that never happened, and it's just like I can't figure this episode out.
So before we cut to our final thoughts and then part 2 of this, I'm going to tell you something. Let me know if this changes your opinion or what you think of this fact. This was mostly produced as a promotion for Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country.
Okay.
So that's kind of it's not a purely like story reason that
Right.
Spock is being brought back. Like they're bringing him back just to sort of promote that the final original series movie is coming out.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think it has a huge impact on it, but it's more just like, this episode, you know, bringing back a beloved original series character is not that they came up with a great idea, you know, and we're like, we need Spock back. It was like, Spock is coming back. We need to shoehorn him into an idea somehow. Go.
Yeah, it's. I kind of wish you hadn't told me that because it feels a lot more shoehorned now than touching.
Yep.
In that they have. This is the episode that has a tribute to Roddenberry, who had just died.
Yep.
And it makes sense because, you know, it's original series character on Next Generation. Perfect place to do that. I don't know if he had. I assume he died right around this time.
Yeah, just before.
But yeah, I mean, you know, it makes a lot more sense that way than it is. Well, it doesn't not make sense to be a promotion, but for Star Trek VI. But I mean, like the people who are watching Next Generation are going to go see Star Trek VI anyway.
Yeah. Yes, you know? They are.
And I understand the idea, you know, but I don't know. It just at the very least, all right. If you're doing it as a promotion for Star Trek VI, right? That means you have an idea that you're going to do this for a long time. Mm-hmm. You know this is coming. When you go to the writers' meeting for season 5, is that when we're in season 5?
Yes.
They're like, all right, well, episode 6 is coming out, so we're gonna put Spock in an episode. Start writing, and it's like they just didn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
No, it feels very. It's a very disappointing. I can imagine this episode's more disappointing for people who are really into the original series. I'm not super into the original series. Mm-hmm. You know, I respect the character, and it's almost more touching now that Nimoy's dead. You know, in a weird way. Like you look back, you're like, oh, he was a good actor, and like that character is definitely so iconic in this. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't come across in this episode.
Yeah, I don't think they give him the gravitas that he needs.
Right. Yeah.
I think I understand the idea of keeping him, you know, teasing him at the beginning and then not bringing him in until the last shot. Makes perfect sense. But, you know, when it comes to the next episode, it's just he doesn't do anything. There's no You have no reference for the weight of his character.
Yep.
It's just he could have been anybody. And Spock deserves better than that.
I would totally agree. Let's wrap this one up because I do have a lot of stuff I can talk about in the second part. I think it'll be an easier episode to talk about once we have both of them done. But I'm going to play an audio clip. Me and Clay are going to come back with final thoughts and ratings for part 1 of Unification.
We're obviously intended for one crewman, sir. There is but a single sleeping space.
I'm sure the Klingons found it amusing to put us in here together.
Since I do not require sleep, I propose you take the shelf, sir. I am content to stand.
Farewell, Mr. Data. Thank you.
Are you comfortable, sir?
I suppose so.
Good night, Captain.
Part 1 of Unification. So Clay, I think we're in agreement that this is not a very good episode of Star Trek, which is disappointing because it's been a strong season so far. I'm going to give this one a 2. It has a couple moments that save it. The Picard Data scene is really probably the best scene in the entire thing. But overall, it's just a gross misuse of Spock, which we're going to get into in more depth in the next episode of this, covering the second part.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same thing. I was almost gonna say a 3 just because I feel like you're saying, there's some good character stuff. But this whole thing feels like I don't know, what's the best way to describe it? It's like when an old cast member of SNL comes back to host, and you've got a new cast that's got all their own characters and all their own stuff, and they're making a name for themselves, but their whole focus is put on doing stuff to bolster the old characters that this other cast member had. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they've got this really boring thing that's servicing the whole point is to service the fact that they have Spock on the show. But you get little flashes of, oh wait, the Next Generation guys are really good too.
Right.
So yeah, it's really unfortunate because I think they really could have done something really good. I think.
Yeah, and I think that they try a little bit more in the next episode. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 2. I'm kind of the same way. I thought when I watched it originally, I was like, oh, it's a 3, and then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, it's really not a 3. There's a lot of things holding back. I mean, just that. The sheer audacity of that Admiral performance in the opening scene is I recommend everyone go back and watch that because I have no idea what is going on, what she's looking at, and why she's talking like that. Anyway, Clay, thank you very much for coming on for this one.
Yeah, anytime.
We'll be back in a couple days with Unification Part 2. Thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed the content, you're on YouTube, like and comments, appreciate it. If you're on iTunes, a rating and review helps get the show out there. Anyway, we'll be back with Unification Part 2. See you.